Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the argy-bargy in the Conservative Party around the role that Boris Johnson should or shouldn't be playing. Certainly the consensus at the top of the party is that he shouldn't, because they've just told him to go on another holiday and not come back until the campaign is over. So good decision or bad decision? Well, if I'm honest, under normal circumstances, I would say this is probably the most politically astute conclusion that Sunak's team have ever come up with. And I think I mean that literally. This morning, Rishi Sunak was on LBC once again saying, if your child is being deprived of anything, it's because you're a lazy parent. And yesterday, his team staged a photo opportunity which required the cooperation of a flock of sheep. I mean, how insane. Your campaign is in tatters. All of your previous campaign stunts have gone badly wrong. You're being ridiculed on a daily basis. And you then decide to put your political future in the hands of sheep. Have they never heard of the expression, never work with children or animals? Needless to say, the sheep did not behave themselves and spent the entire time running away from them as he approached. It probably didn't help that David Cameron was in the area. I think the pigs may have been talking to the sheep. And also, there are a lot of puns you can use about sheep. It's just a fundamentally poor choice of animal to use for political stunts. And their campaign is now pushing the message that Labour are on for a supermajority. Now, being clear, there is no such thing as a supermajority in the UK in constitutional terms. It doesn't mean anything. If you have a majority, you will get your legislation passed. Yes, you want more than a simple numerical majority because you will have rebels in your party you need to overcome, or even just every now and then there will be MPs who are perfectly good MPs who just have local constituency issues with individual bits of legislation. But once you've reached that sort of majority level where you can overcome that, you don't unlock further superpowers with an even greater majority. The Tories are just desperate to avoid being relegated to third place. However, not so desperate as to ask Boris Johnson to campaign for them. Now, I doubt he would have anyway. He claims he would. His supporters claim, he was totally ready. But being honest, he didn't even run a full campaign schedule in 2019. And then he was running to actually lead a majority government himself, not trying to save the shattered remains of the reputation of his political assassin. But even if Johnson were prepared to campaign for his party, there's really no point. Despite the hype he gets from his media mates, he's not popular. He still has a little bit of support in the Red Wall, not enough to save the Tory candidates there. In fact, actually, Red Wall Tories today are fuming because it's made this point in the Times that senior Tories have said, what's the point? We could only send him to the Red Wall and we've lost the Red Wall. So you've got all the Tory Red Wall MP candidates going, hang on, what? We're trying to save our seats here. And they've got, no, yeah, we are trying to save your seats. We're trying. Well, why aren't you sending us Boris Johnson? Because we don't really care about you. The Conservatives are literally trying to hang on to their former strongholds by their fingernails, and Johnson is just not popular with those voters. Remember, he was losing those voters before the scandals. It wasn't just Partygate, Owen Paterson, Partygate, all the rest of it. It was before all that. He lost a rock-solid, safe seat in a by-election in the summer of 2021. So strategically speaking, Boris Johnson is about as much use as an umbrella in a typhoon. Other Tories have argued that he would just be a distraction anyway. The press would focus on whether Johnson was getting himself back in the game in order to prepare for a return to frontline politics after the election fallout. He's not a candidate, of course, but in theory, a tasty by-election could come up in the next Parliament, or maybe a willing Conservative MP in a suitably safe seat might just retire to set one up sooner rather than later for some suitable reward. After all, any seats the Tories can hold on to in this election should actually then become safer for a by-election afterwards. There'll be no real motivation to displace them in a by-election once they're out of government, but it would still need to be somewhere where the local Conservative supporters don't actually hate Johnson. But the point is, he'd just create a circus of speculation in the media. Political news articles would essentially become variations on a theme of, will it be Boris Johnson or Nigel Farage who take over the Conservative Party for the following election? The odd one might even talk about a joint venture, but that would be mad. Their egos are far too large for either of them to agree to play second fiddle to the other. And so Johnson's role in this campaign is to record a few video endorsements whilst looking and sounding like he's downed a barrel of wine first to any candidates who think he's useful to them, and the odd letter of endorsement for them to use as well. And having just returned from one family holiday in Sardinia, according to the Times, he's about to pop off somewhere else and not come back until the day before the election, which I think suits the senior leadership. Mind you, although I say, that not wanting to incorporate Johnson into the campaign is actually sensible, I say that only because he is of no use in winning them any seats. He cannot appeal to their genuine target voters and would indeed just distract from their more serious campaigning. But therein lies the flaw in the logic. Because what is their more serious campaigning? Yesterday evening, the Conservatives released a party political broadcast. You would not have known it was a party political broadcast other than the fact it said so on the BBC as it was broadcast. These things are supposed to be like a slick production featuring narration from the leader of the party. That's a typical party political. This was a low-resolution recording of Laura Trott giving a press conference from last week. It was surreal. You actually have to wonder if letting Boris Johnson go around the country distracting from the Tory campaign might not actually, it might be a good idea. If the Tory campaign is going to keep falling over like this anyway, they're now trying to run an advert that makes it appear that Russia, China and North Korea would approve of Starmer becoming Prime Minister here. It just can't work on any level. Nobody's going to believe it of the human rights lawyer, especially coming from the party that put an actual Russian oligarch in the House of Lords, that made someone who gets drunk with Russian agents the Prime Minister, has taken a lot of money from Russian oligarchs and given Russian oligarchs, many of them, an easy ride in terms of sanctions since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Absolutely mad. It was actually pointed out, if the Tories used this same attack ad, but on Nigel Farage instead of Keir Starmer, that actually could have had an impact, given Farage's refusal to criticise these leaders willingly. But the Tories are too afraid of taking on Farage or Reform UK. That's essentially been the difference between losing this election and facing a potential third-place finish. But that is also a matter for another video, perhaps. The point is that the Conservatives have still not worked out what their line should be in this campaign. Their client media are all pushing a new Labour tax conspiracy theory today, so they're not letting go of that one. Another line that's not working, and can't work. Not only do most people want taxes to go up to pay for better services, most also know that tax doesn't have to be just dumped on the poor all the time. Like this list of supposedly secret Labour taxes coming our way. According to the Conservatives, of course, even in these newspapers that are pushing it, it says it comes from the Conservative Party. Increasing capital gains tax. 97% of people don't pay it. So in return for better services, yeah, they'll jump at the proposal. A wealth tax. Now, Labour have previously ruled out a wealth tax. However, I haven't seen them ruling it out in the manifesto itself. And I'm not sure if they've been asked about it during this campaign. I suspect they probably have, but I can't specifically remember. But again, it's not likely to be an unpopular move if they did it. They're also claiming that national insurance will be increased in certain areas, but Labour have explicitly ruled that out, including in the manifesto, so that's a pointless lie. Removing some inheritance tax breaks, again, if they did, that would not be unpopular. And then this Tory dossier of secret Labour tax policies actually states that they believe Labour are going to make property tax lower for lower cost homes and more expensive for the more expensive homes. Are they off their head? They're actually trying to attack Labour for making a form of tax more progressive. They just don't get it, do they? Frankly, all they're doing with this list of made-up policies is making the rest of us disappointed if Labour don't do it. And another thing Rishi Sunak said today absolutely blew my mind. So there's a billionaire who's donated to the Conservatives in the past. I think he donated $500,000 to their campaign in 2019. And he's now said he would vote for Labour. He hasn't said he'll donate to Labour or anything like that. But he said he's going to vote for Labour. And Rishi Sunak was asked about this and in his most petulant voice said, well, it's all right for him. He could afford the Labour taxes, can't he? It's all they want. It's all they think about is taxes, 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 taxes. And this is the party that's waxed them up to the highest level in like history. Then there's the personalities themselves. People keep asking why the campaign load isn't being shared more evenly across the cabinet. Now, I could say it's because most of the cabinet are very poor media performers and you'd be better off keeping them away from the cameras. But that wouldn't explain why Jeremy Hunt isn't featuring much. The actual Chancellor, and one who actually generally comes across better than most of his colleagues in interviews. But Hunt, like many of his cabinet colleagues, are having to prioritise fighting their own seats. Has there ever been a time when so many members of the cabinet are so vulnerable in their own constituencies? You expect a few casualties when a government falls, of course, but we're looking at carnage. So their own personal election takes precedence over the national campaign. Jeremy Hunt is today banging on about mobile phone reception in a local area. He's been an MP since 2005. He's been in cabinet since 2010. There was a 2.5 period gap when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. If he cared that much about it, I'm pretty sure he could have done something by now. So the Tories are still rudderless in this campaign. Their attempts are just poor at this point, almost like they just want to run down the clock. And even most of the cabinet can't be bothered to help out. So is it a good idea to tell Boris Johnson to just leave the country again? Yes, in theory, he can do no good. But in the current context, probably makes no difference. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.